Turning to Texas now, hundreds took part in a 4-day march in support of voting rights. The rally ended in the state's capital in Austin on Saturday with a concert from Willie Nelson. Former Congressman Beto O'Rourke was one of the organizers. Participants denounced proposed changes to the state's voting laws. They called on Congress to act on federal legislation to protect the right to vote. Reporter David Gonzalez from our affiliate station, KHOU in Houston, has more.
The brutal summer heat did not stop people from all over Texas from coming together and marching for issues that impact many of them, like protecting the individual right to vote.
My father fought in World War II for democracy, so I think the least I can do is be out here and protect democracy and our right to vote.
Also, other issues like ending the filibuster, ending poverty, and raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
15. When do we want it? Now.
Their march led them to the steps of the state capitol, where they raised not just signs, but their voices, demanding action to take care of those they say are under attack.
Those seeking to limit access to the vote will strangle liberty and justice for all.
There are people from every single part of this state who chose to be here right now to stand up and be counted at this moment of truth for our state, for our country, and for democracy.
Republicans say they're only trying to make elections safer and called the march a publicity stunt. But for those who stood in the heat, this is real.
This is about the possibility of a more perfect union on which everybody is lifted. And from the bottom, we lift the whole nation.
The rally ended with the mini concert from country legend Willie Nelson, who says the power of voting belongs to all of us.
The biggest gun we got, called the ballot box. If you don't like who's in there, vote on that box.
Reporting in Austin, David Gonzalez, KHOU 11 News.
For more on the national voting rights issue, I want to bring in Jessica Levinson. She's a CBS News legal contributor and professor at Loyola Law School. Jessica, always great having you on the show. So Republican state legislators have introduced literally hundreds of bills under the umbrella of election integrity. Is there a commonality in what these bills are attempting to address?
Yes, I think there's a commonality in what they're purporting to address and what they're actually addressing, unfortunately. The commonality in what they're purporting to address, as we just heard, is the idea that we need to shore up our elections, that we need to make sure that our election administration is free of fraud or corruption, and in general, that the processes have integrity. That is a solution in search of a problem, because there are plenty of problems with our elections in America, but rampant voter fraud or elections that lack integrity are not two of those problems. So what these laws are really about, unfortunately, I think, is trying to shore up power. And Republicans see that the demographics are changing, and that one of the ways that they believe, I think, they do better is to try and ensure that certain voters get out, and for other voters, there are more thresholds to get out. I don't like saying this. The right to vote should in no way be a partisan issue, but I think, like everything in America right now, it certainly has become a partisan issue.
Yeah, both parties should be united in the idea of preserving our democracy requires everybody being able to vote. So, Jessica, during a cabinet meeting last month, the president emphasized the importance of protecting voters' rights. Let's play what he had to say.
Tackling voting rights, which is an existential threat to democracy right now. The things that are being asked are just beyond the pale. And the vice president has been working hard on this issue and going to continue to. We all are, but there's much more to do.
So what exactly can the federal government do to counter, as you say, a solution in search of a problem, voting restrictions passing on the state level?
Well, the federal government has a whole host of tools in its toolbox, and it really depends on what's going on. So, for instance, in states where they've already passed restrictive voting laws, the federal government, the Department of Justice, can sue. They've done that in Georgia, for instance. We see a lawsuit pending. The Department of Justice can also you basically offer legal assistance wherever appropriate, wherever bills are pending, let people know that they will, in fact, be served with litigation if those bills pass. The federal government, though, one of the big things it can do, and we've seen this from the president before he was in office, is push for new federal voting rights legislation. That's not the Department of Justice. That's obviously the executive saying to Congress and the Senate, we need a basic floor of protection in this country. And so there's both the kind of litigation side, and then there's also the legislation side. And we've seen, I think, throughout the Biden administration that he really has been trying to focus on those two tracks. And of course, the Supreme Court just recently kind of took a lot of the teeth out from the current Voting Rights Act. And I think that's why you see a greater push for a legislative solution right now.
And that legislative solution on a federal level, just to clarify, would in fact supersede all of the state and local pieces of legislation that we've seen passed recently?
So, yes, it's a little bit of a dance. So the federal, and that's a great question. So the federal government can, again, try and provide that floor of protection, saying to states, you don't get to go below this when it comes to protecting people's right to vote. But we also know under the Constitution, it says states, you determine the time, place, and manner of elections. So the federal government, it's such a good question, can't go too far. And that's one of the things that, particularly with this Supreme Court, you have to be really careful that I know a lot of people are really excited. We need a new Voting Rights Act, and we do need a new Voting Rights Act, but we need one that is going to withstand scrutiny from this Supreme Court. And if you go too far into what this court understands to be the state's role here, then we're back to square one, because the court will declare that law or that portion of the law unconstitutional, as it did back in 2013 in Shelby County.
That's such important context, Jessica. Let's talk a little bit about the filibuster, because there's been several calls to eliminate it. The filibuster obviously being a process which allows a minority party to challenge something passed without a large enough majority. The president says ditching the filibuster, something that both parties have used for decades, would throw Congress into chaos. What's the argument to do so?
Well, I think the argument to get rid of the filibuster is to support the voters' will here. So the voters put a Democrat in the White House. The Senate, by a very thin margin, is controlled by Democrats. The House is controlled by Democrats. And the idea is that the voters decided to elect these people because they believed in their agenda and they wanted them to effectuate change. They didn't want to send all these people to Washington, D.C., only to have them say, we tried our best, but there's this procedural hurdle in the Senate called the filibuster. So sorry, we weren't able to implement healthcare reform, criminal justice reform, immigration reform, or in the case of what we're talking about, Voting Rights Act reform. So the case for getting rid of the filibuster is really to allow our elected officials to implement the agenda that we purportedly sent them there to implement. If you think about the number of senators who represent Republican states, and who are representing people really in the minority just in terms of absolute numbers, and the power they have to block legislation. Again, you can have a president supporting a Voting Rights Act, Congress supporting a Voting Rights Act, and a simple majority of the Senate vote supporting the Voting Rights Act. But if you don't have 60 in the Senate, it basically means that 10 senators can say to the president, the House, and the American people, and 50 of their colleagues, sorry, but no dice. We're not going to pass that.
So, Jessica, I only have a little bit of time left with you, and I want to ask you about something big that happened this week. The Justice Department directed the Treasury Department to hand over former President Donald Trump's tax returns to Congress. Tell us what this means.
It means that they read the law and they followed it. I mean, so legally speaking, that's what it means. But what I think is really important for viewers to know is we're not going to see the tax returns right now. In this memo, it did say that President Trump and his attorneys would have time to question this. They would have time to say, we have, these X, Y, and Z problems. But I think eventually these tax returns will be handed over to Congress. What they do with it, whether they ever become public, those are questions. And of course, right now, I think our eyes should be on those criminal investigations out of New York.
Jessica Levinson, thanks so much for coming on and chatting with me.
Thank you.